Hi, this is Kids Corner. Today we have Iwa who does pottery. She's going to give her name and more details of what she does. So go, you're up.
Hi, Hi everybody. My name is Eva. Last name Grochowska, Polish. I was born in Poland and moved to the U.S. with my family when I was 3 years old. Do you want me to say any more about that?
When you're 3 years old?
Yes.
Wow, how did you happen to come at 3 years old?
So my father's parents actually were in America, so we came down. I believe my parents had a work visa, but we ended up staying in America. So it was me, my mom, my sister, my father, and my brother.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
What's quite a contrast from one country to the other? You're only 3, but...
Right. We would go and visit my grandparents in Poland, and a lot of times during our childhood it was difficult for me, especially because I was bullied in school here in America. So I always felt that, I wonder if we stayed in Poland, if I wouldn't have been bullied, because it was, where I felt that maybe I belonged as opposed to being here because of being bullied. So I felt more comfortable in Poland. Plus, our whole family was in Poland, and we really didn't have a lot of family here.
Sorry that happened to you.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So how and why did you get started?
With my artwork?
With your art, your pottery.
So, I've always loved art ever since I was a young child, ever since I can remember. But I was introduced to clay when I was in middle school for the first time. And then in high school, they had a bunch of pottery classes. So I took every single class that I could take. The beginner pottery class all the way to accelerated, all the way until you could do your own clay projects. But specifically, as far as what I'm doing now, I reconnected with my artwork back in 2012 after I left my last abusive relationship.
So you were abused?
Yes. I was abused as a child by my father, and then I ended up being in 2 adult relationships where both partners were abusive. My last one ending in 2012.
They say if it's in the family, you end up going towards to fix it.
Yes, I've heard that. And then I also have a sister who has not been in an abusive relationship. But I have. So I've always thought about that for years. And I tried to figure out, how did that end up happening to me when growing up, my father abusing us and my mother. I always said, I would never let a man do this to me if I was his wife or girlfriend.
Right.
So I tried to understand how I ended up in these situations, and what I've found for myself is that I wanted to be loved, and I never had self-love and self-worth for myself growing up in a house that I grew up in. And I had a big issue with binge eating, and I never understood why I had that addiction. I didn't even know it was an addiction as a kid. I went over this in my mind as I got older and tried to understand why everything happened the way it did. But I never loved myself in that way where I expected the best behavior, because I've never been exposed to that growing up, on top of being bullied in school for being quiet and having a different name that kids made fun of literally just for that. And I feel like I ended up in those situations as an adult because I thought these people were good, that they were going to love me, and that all I wanted was for them to love me. And then I ended up being, everybody's heard this term, groomed, where they groom you into this victim and you don't even know what's happening as it's happening. And then you get tricked into believing that you're the one that's worthless, that you're the one that's causing, you to get beat up and used and abused in all different types of ways. So I feel now that I've worked on myself so much with my artwork and standing up for myself when I have to, I feel like I would not end up in a situation like that again, because I'm a much stronger person than I was back then. That's how I feel.
That was very, very good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of work that I had to do on myself and sit with myself to to understand.
It's okay. Just take a deep breath. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not conversations like this are not easy,
No.
but they're necessary.
Yeah. You people listening, watching you will help them
Right, and that's
going through.
That's what
And
I
that's
want
what
to
helps
do.
go through, helps you better
Because you don't feel like you're by yourself.
by yourself, and
And
you
that-
feel like you're the only one, and nobody's
Correct.
gone through what you've gone through.
Yep. Yep.
You don't have to answer this. Was it emotional, physical?
So, with my father was mostly physical, like getting hit with a belt and, intimidation. But as an adult, the first guy was mostly physical, and the last one was the worst, because literally any type of abuse that you can think of, this person did to me. Financial, sexual, emotional, psychological, everything you can think of.
Isolation.
Yes. It's one of those things where and I've shared a lot of what kinds of things have happened to me specifically, but if I wrote on a piece of paper, like I had to for my restraining order, of what this person actually physically did, it's almost something like out of a horror story. Like, you wouldn't believe it. Like, it's psychotic. We're not just talking about like, I'm gonna punch you in the face type of stuff. Like,
I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah, like one example that I will share is that this last person that I left in 2012, and I never say his name, not to protect him, but because I don't feel that he's worth me saying his name. So I always use special words when I talk about him.
Right.
But there was one time that we were in a town in Connecticut, and it was the middle of the day on a Saturday, and we pulled into a cemetery, and he was yelling at me, the typical stuff going off on me, driving my car, and he says to me, he yells to me, get out of the damn car. So he makes me get out of the car. He pulls me down to the ground, gets on top of me, and starts, ripping my shirt open, and is yelling at me and telling me to take all my clothes off in this cemetery. And I was terrified of him always, and I said to him, no, as he was choking me, and I was just hoping that somebody was going to walk by or see this and, call the cops and just end this for me finally. And nobody was there. He was choking me. I was just trying to keep his hands from, killing me.
You're right.
Because that's what would have happened.
Well, you're right.
And at one point he just told me to get up and get in the car. And then we went home like nothing ever happened.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's just one.
That's quite emotionally.
That's one example out of 3.5 years worth of
Yeah.
examples.
That's awful. I'm sorry about that.
Thank you. And I've also learned that strangulation is one of the worst things that someone can do to you, because that means that they are the closest to being able to kill somebody.
Yeah.
That's what I've learned at a conference that I went to, which is really scary because that happened to me several times with this person.
Several times. That happened to me once.
You
So
never
I know
forget
how
it.
you feel. Yeah, I'm visualizing as you're telling me. So that's what led you to do your pottery. Can you show us your pottery?
So yes, so I actually started with pottery in high school, but I loved sculpting more. So I actually use clay to sculpt flowers that I started creating on these glass vessels, and I started doing this. I started to get back into my artwork in 2012, but specifically sculpting these flowers in like 2014. And the reason behind the flowers, and this is my own concept of a flower.
Yeah, I was wondering.
Yeah.
That was my next.
It just came to me one day. I was listening to my music, my favorite band in the world, which is Kill Switch Engage. They're a metal band. I love them. I was just listening to my music and I sculpted this flower, and I had no idea like what it was turning into. And then I put it on a glass vessel, and the concept just started coming to me that I'm going to fill these glass vessels with rusted metals, or now I started to incorporate different items into the glass vessels, but I started off with rusted metals because for me, I love how rusted metal looks, but for me it started to symbolize that someone can go through horrific traumas in their life and come out above it and survive, and that's where the flower came into play, above the metal.
You've done that very well.
Thank you.
Especially taking that negative energy, the power, and giving it back and giving it positive and making something.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. How long have you been doing this?
So the flowers I started sculpting in 2014. So since 2014 I've been making them, and I recently quit my job in corporate America after about almost 14 years, and end of July, August, I started to do my artwork full time, which is a big deal for me because I've realized every day that I'm in my studio, I'm like, this is the most work that I've made in just a few months that I've made in these past few years, because I just never had the time. And it's a new chapter in my healing process, because now I have the time where I'm sitting by myself in my own space, not being bombarded with other things where it doesn't allow me to go through what I have to work through in my mind. So it's just it's good in several ways, because I get to create, I get to connect more with people that support me and want to share their story and connect with my story, and I get to work on my mental health all at the same time.
Wow.
Which is huge.
It's just working with the clay, that must be relaxing as well.
Yes, I do love it. I love just being at my desk with the sun coming through the windows.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll sit back and just think to myself, like, this is just so special right now, because I'm very fortunate to be able to have this time in my life where I can just be I'm gonna get emotional again.
And you're alive.
just be myself, and I actually feel like I'm living. Like I'm not just going day to day to day to day doing stuff that doesn't matter to me. I'm actually able to
I'd give you
live
a hug
my
right
life.
now, but I can't.
COVID.
COVID.
Air hug.
Air hugs, yes.
Yeah, it's just a very special time for me. I feel really.
It's a big release.
Yeah, it is. Because I think to myself, like, all the stuff that I've survived, like the fact that I made it out alive and that I'm able to have peace for the first time, like actual peace, is a big deal, because I know that a lot of people will never get that in their life. So I'm really fortunate to have that at 35. So I'm
Yes.
grateful.
Yeah. And you made this room your own.
Yes.
It's very pretty.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'll get some pictures of your works that you've done.
Yes.
That's good that you're able to do what you do. So you do this to connect with other people.
Yes.
Do you have a website that they can get more information?
Yes, so right now I am working on completing my website, because I don't want to put out something that's not the best that it can be. So right now I'm working on my website, but I'm on Facebook under my name, Eva Grochowska, or Freedom for Eva. You can look it up on Facebook. And that's FREEDOM, the number 4, and Eva, EWA, which is my platform that I created back in 2013. After I left that last relationship, that's when I decided, in order for me to not allow these abusers to constantly have power, I wanted to do something to help myself and to help other people. I created this platform to make my art, share my work, give a portion of my proceeds to domestic violence shelters. I also had, a few years back, I had 2 kids groups, art groups that I had at Prudence Crandall, New Britain, and Safe Futures in New London. And now I'm just working on my art and giving money to Safe Futures and Prudence Crandall, but hopefully I hope to one day volunteer, or if not, work with them at one point. But Freedom for Eva, that name, not many people know, but it actually came from, I had to create a new email when I left this person, because he had access to all of my stuff. Electronic banks, emails, everything. So I had to get a new email address. And for some reason in my head, I'm like, I don't want it to be something that doesn't mean anything. So I left him on April 4th, 2012. So the 4th symbolizes in America, like July 4th, Independence Day. So I thought the 4th, that's my number, April 4th. And April's the 4th month of the year. So I ended up coming up with the name Freedom, the number 4, Eva, which meant freedom for me, but not only me, freedom for Eva, which is a slang term. When people say ever, they say Eva. So it just meant for me and forever, and I want that name to connect with people that have been impacted by domestic violence, because I want them to know that it is possible to, even though I know it doesn't seem like it would ever be possible, and I know a lot of people don't make it out alive, because I do acknowledge that, it is possible to be able to live a life without being abused. It's not easy. I'm not going to sit here and say it's easy, but it is possible. And it is worth saving your life for.
That's good words for other people listening to live by and hope. Yeah.
Thank you.
So that was my question, was how are you thriving after abuse? And you made it clear.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself doing in 5 years?
So, biggest thing is I hope I have my health, because that's number one.
Right?
But I hope that I'm still creating. One of my biggest things is impacting people's lives for the better. That I am able to reach as many people as possible with my artwork and with sharing my story. I've only shared this a couple of times because it's still difficult for me, but in the beginning, when I started making my art and I came to the realization that I wanted to share my story, I was doing a lot of public speaking at events, at schools, so many different places, classrooms, and I would always get nervous, but it was like physical nerves, and I didn't understand what was happening to my body. Come to find out, I think I overloaded my mental capacity with reliving all that stuff, because I would speak in detail about what happened to me. And I had to stop public speaking. So this is like the first
One instance.
come back to talking, because my mental health took a turn for the worst. Stuff that when I heard anxiety or PTSD or panic disorder, I had no idea what that meant until I actually lived it. What I will say is, when you do get out of a relationship like this, do what feels right, and you have to focus on doing what's right for you, even though you might be disappointing other people. You have to do the right thing for yourself, because ultimately you're the one that has to deal with everything that's happened to you. So that's why I've been focusing just behind the scenes and just making art in my studio, because I feel safe and comfortable. I was really nervous about this talk, but I pushed myself to do it, because I know how important it is to get this message out to other people, because I know how it feels to be in an abusive relationship and literally feel like you're a caged animal, because that's ultimately what it is. It's an invisible cage, but it is a cage. So I hope to be able to work more on my mental health and be able to speak more with people, to share my story on a more intimate level, where it's not just through my artwork, but also through speaking. And whether that be with adults or kids, whoever needs to and wants to hear it. But I will say that I hope that art and sharing my story is my life. That is what I feel that I'm meant to do. So that is what I see myself doing in 5 years, and just taking care of myself and doing it in the best way that I can.
Bravo.
Thank
Bravo
you.
to you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
It takes a lot. I'm glad. Thank you very much for saying yes to sharing your story. I'm sure that's very difficult. If at any point you change your mind, just let me know that you don't want it to air. But
I won't change my mind.
okay.
Thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Yes. So we've run out of time here. So is there any last minute things you want to say?
Thank you to everyone that has supported me up to this point.
Okay.
that means a lot. I get emotional because
Did you go in any programs or anything?
So I went to, well, I worked to get a restraining order, so the court told me to go to counseling through Prudence Crandall. I only went a couple times, but I'm glad that I went because that's how I got the idea to volunteer there and work with the kids there to make art.
Oh,
So that was really special.
yeah, that's really
But-
good.
Thank you to everybody who supported me up to this point. Your words, your support, your encouragement is everything.
All right.
Thank you.